Now, both the radar and manual controller observed the primary target. The military controllers also viewed the primary target on their radar, and they identified it as a double primary, a very large primary. The pilot and crew viewed the target on their radar, and they were also able to see the huge UFO out there with their own eyes. Now, if this craft had been a Learjet or a military aircraft in today's air traffic operations, when the pilot looks out the window and sees somebody shooting across his nose or flying along with him, the first thing he does is call air traffic and say, "Hey, do you have traffic at my altitude?" And the controller would panic, looks at the scope and says, "No, we don't have any traffic at your altitude." Well, it's an unknown. The air traffic controller then says, "We will track that guy until he lands, and we'll have flight standards meet him down there. We're going to write him up, we'll pull his ticket, we'll do whatever we have to do." But the pilot basically said, "It's a UFO." Well, who believes in UFOs? And this is the kind of attitude that the air traffic had at the time. So when I went back to headquarters, I gave Admiral England a quick briefing and showed him the video. He set up a briefing with the President Reagan scientific staff, and he told me my function was to hand this operation off to those people. And those people ended up being the CIA, the President's group, a bunch of grunts that came to the meeting. The Admiral says, "I want you to hand it off because the FAA does not control UFOs, and we want it out of our district." Now, I brought a copy of the videotape I made. I had bought a camera for Christmas just before this happened, and I took a videotape of it. When I got home, I showed it to my wife and my neighbors, and I made a copy of it. When I went to the briefing, we put on this video for the people there 2 or 3 times. So it takes, a half hour. So we'll talk about an hour and a half or so. They asked a bunch of questions, very intelligent questions. They wanted to know the speed of the antenna. They wanted to know the frequency of the antenna. They wanted to know the beam width of the antenna. They wanted to know the algorithm for the height finding equipment. And the people I brought up in the room were all headquarters technical engineers, hardware and software people, and they gave those answers like they were a high school math coach. A squared, B squared, C squared. They spit that stuff right out. It was really amazing to watch these guys work. When they got done, the CIA said to all the people there, "This event never happened. We were never here. And you're all sworn to secrecy. We are confiscating all this data." And they did. They took everything that was in the room. In those days, when you printed out something from the computer, it printed out boxes and boxes and boxes of these printouts. You remember these from the days when we used to see it on TV? Boxes and boxes of this stuff. This is titled "UFO Incident at Anchorage on 11/18/86. And it tells you what data is in here. So we could take a chart and we could reproduce everything that the controller's seen on a piece of paper. Well, they took all that data. A few days later, they brought in, or a few weeks later, I guess it was, they brought in the FAA's report of the event that never happened. I had them put it on a little table in my room in the corner, and I said, "Well, leave it there, and when the CIA wants the rest of the data, I'm sure they're going to come and get it." Not too long after that, they brought the voice tapes for the same incident, and we put that on top of that package, waiting for the CIA to come and get it. Now, when I was at the tech center, I had the software engineers and the hardware engineers put together a chart that would show every target along the route of flight. And what they did is they commented on it. This is when we first saw the UFO. This is when the pilot saw the UFO. This is when the military guy saw the UFO, all the way down here. And there's 2 of these. It's ripped off here a little bit because it ended up in my barn for a couple of years, and I didn't know it was in the box. And the mice were eating it. When I got done with this briefing, now we're talking to the engineers that build the air traffic control system, hardware and software. When they got done hanging this up on the wall, I said, "Tell me what those dots are. What is it?" the hardware engineers got up and said, this problem over here, that's a software problem. And this one over here, software problem. Every time, all the way down, it's a software problem. There's nothing wrong with our hardware system. So I said, fine. It makes sense to me. So the software guy gets up, and he says, this target over here, that's a hardware problem. And this one here, a hardware problem. There was no software problems, and there was no hardware problems. Well, what do we have? If we don't have anything, do we have a target there or not? Well, one man got up and said, my religion forbids me to believe in UFOs. So I said, fine. I gave the briefing. They carried all the stuff. They took it out. This stuff stayed in my office for 2 years. When I left, one of the specialists came in. They were in a hurry to get me out. They packed up everything that was hanging there, all the stuff on the walls, and they put it in boxes and shipped it to my house. Today, I like to say that most people working as FAA controllers, they're not really familiar with how the FAA system works. They don't know why aircraft traveling through our airspace is not displayed under scope. They don't know why. I do, but they don't. The system today in the organization of the FAA is not configured to identify and track these type of performances. That's the end of my speech. Who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes or the government?
Thank you, Inspector Callahan. You beat Clint Eastwood hands down. That was great. My remarks are pretty short. I'm Fife Symington. In 1997, during my second term as governor of Arizona, I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality. I witnessed a massive delta-shaped craft that silently navigated over the Squaw Peak area in North Phoenix in the evening, and it was truly breathtaking. To my astonishment, it appeared to be a solid structure. It was huge. It had a very distinctive leading edge with huge embedded lights in it, and it was just traveling quietly, made no sound, through the Arizona night sky. I still don't know what it was. As a pilot and a former Air Force officer, I can definitively say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object that I'd ever seen. And it was certainly not high-altitude flares as put out by the Air Force at Luke Air Force Base, because I've never seen flares fly in formation. The incident was witnessed by hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Maricopa County and in southern Arizona, and my office was besieged with phone calls from very concerned citizens. The growing hysteria intensified when the story broke nationally, and so I decided to lighten the mood of the state, and I called a press conference where I dressed up my chief of staff in a Martian outfit. It was meant to be a spoof, a good-natured spoof. That worked. We managed to lessen the sense of panic at the time, but I also upset quite a few of my constituents. Well, I'd like now to set the record straight. I never meant to ridicule anyone. My office did make inquiries as to the origin of the craft, but to this day they remain unanswered. Eventually, the Air National Guard claimed responsibility, stating that their pilots had been dropping flares. They also, another individual from Tucson said that A-10s had been flying in formation over Maricopa County, but those of us in the Air Force, and those of you who know about A-10s, they're called the Warthog, it's a tank-killing aircraft, know that it's the noisiest machine in the sky, and there's no way that a flight of A-10s could come over Maricopa County and be quiet. That just doesn't work. So we get these explanations that fly in the face of facts, explanations like weather balloons, swamp gas, military flares, and hardware and software problems. I was never happy with this silly explanation. There might very well have been military flares in the sky that evening, but that sure wasn't what I